All right, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. So my name is Donna Gunkel, and I am the Director of Clinical Integration here at United Medical ACO. And today is Thursday, June 19th, 2025, and we're here to talk about our United Medical ACO Diabetes Program Wellness webinar. And first off, I'd like to introduce you to our team members.
Hello.
All right.
All right, there you go.
All right. So I'll introduce. We have Kamal Erkin, who is our chairman of United Medical ACO. Myself, Donna Gonko, as I indicated, I am the director of clinical integration. Then we have Dr. Ripu Hundal. He is an endocrinologist at First State Endocrinology. He is our program director. We have Caroline Weber, one of our dietitians, and she's here with us today. She is our program coordinator. We also have two social workers. We have Roxana Portlock here with us today, and also Carla Williams. So what do we do on the diabetes wellness webinars? So we like to ask a variety of specialists to join us. So we do this once a month. And we have a variety of specialists within our network, including endocrinology, cardiology, nephrology, podiatry, social work, physical therapy. And then oftentimes we also ask some outside vendors such as Libre or Dexcom and some other vendors to join us so that we can discuss a variety of topics that may affect you on your diabetes journey. Today's panelist, as I indicated, is Roxana and Caroline. And our topic for today is going to be beyond blood sugar, how your environment affects your health. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Roxana to walk you through the first aspect. And then at the end, we'll have Caroline discuss the nutritional aspects.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Donna and Caroline, for letting me be a part of this presentation. There are 5 key elements for the social determinants of health: economic status, education, healthcare, environment, and social content. Excuse me. Okay, you want to go to the next slide? Okay, now on the next several slides, we will address categories of questions that we addressed during the SDOH, Social Determination of Health, assessment, and we use a prepared form. In these slides, we will address resources that we can offer for many concerns, issues, or insecurities that are identified. And Donna, please feel free to add any information regarding the insurance resources and any other information to help with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Roxana. So, just a little bit. So, we're talking about our social workers, right, and what they can do. So, we do support all the providers within our network. So, that's a lot of providers and patients. Your provider's office may also conduct this social determinants of health assessment questionnaire during one of your visits. They're typically done annually during perhaps your physical exam or your annual wellness exam. And also the insurance company look at this information as well to see if there are other programs that perhaps they can offer to help patients with regards to any type of insecurity or any other types of programs to help the patient from both a social and emotional health perspective.
And then once we identify barriers or issues, then we also help the patient to resolve them with the different resources. Okay. Now, part of the 5 elements is the economic that includes factors of employment, income level, expenses, debt burdens, medical bills, and other financial supports. Assessing other financial support. Sorry, I'm talking faster than I'm reading. Okay. Also, the physical elements, this entails aspects of housing, transportation, safeties in your community and in your neighborhoods. So we address all of that and we try to help the patients um, get through any barriers that they may have concerning this. Okay. Yeah, we also deal with education. This is a vital determination of health covering factors like literacy levels, language, childhood education, vocational training, and just a higher quality of education. Okay. Now the food aspects also includes assessment for so sorry, my tongue is so tied. Okay, adequate nutrition addressing hunger and available of healthy food options.
So before we go to the next slide, because I know Roxana really wants to get into some of the actual resources that they offer. I'm gonna just kind of go back just for a moment to the economic stability. So when we talk about the employment status and income level, these are, as Roxana said, right, we use the prepare form. And in that prepare form, there are standard questions that are asked. And all of that is so that we have a better individualized view of that particular patient, because everyone's patient or every patient's status is going to be different, right? So it's really important. And sometimes some of those questions, patients may not want to answer, and they don't have to. They can actually state, I wish not to answer that. The goal of this, though, is if they have any instabilities or any issues, we can only help address them if we know what they are. So that is why all of these areas are addressed with multiple questions in each area. So giving you an example about the economic stability. So sometimes, right, a patient may have some issues like they may have lost a job or their hours may have been reduced at work. And so one of the things that we can do is we may be able to work with social services, right, in order to maybe help them. Sometimes there are certain programs that can help pay a portion of someone's bill, like maybe a utility bill. Sometimes we can help work with the different companies to help the patient get on a payment plan. So maybe they could have that electricity, for example, turned back on. When it comes to physical environment, that incorporates like their housing quality. So one of the things could be related again, like I said, so that debt burden could now be related to their housing quality, right? If they don't have electric or water, if there are other things that are going on. Unfortunately, we do have patients who are also homeless. So we can work with the insurance companies. Many of them, especially the Medicaid insurances in Delaware, often hire a housing specialist so they can work with the patient in addition to our social workers. So many times Roxana and Carla will collaborate with the insurance companies in order to ensure that they can sometimes get them vouchers, maybe temporary vouchers for hotels. They can get them on list for shelters or other temporary types of housing or low-income housing. Some of those things take a very long time, so we always want to work with them on other plan options. But those are just some of the examples of the things that Carla and Roxana do on a day-to-day basis. Did you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about the transportation and what you and Carla can do with regards to the transportation aspect, Roxana?
Yes, many of the insurance companies also offer transportation. Like with Medicaid, they offer transportation to the doctor's appointments where they will have someone pick you up, take you to your appointment, and then come back and take you home. Also, we can work with the patients with the DART application, and that will also, there's a portion for the primary care doctor to fill out as well as the patients, but we can get that started and send the form to the patient to do their portion, and then we will send it to the PCP for that portion. Now, the insurance companies, they will um, offer, people's mobility has been a problem, so they can also put in a referral for them to get like wheelchairs or scooters, different things to help them be able to leave the house to get to their next appointments. And then also social services will help with providing a voucher for transportation as well. Okay. Now, many of the insecurities, we do have resources like through the food bank, through community pantries, to Amazon, through the food bank will offer home deliveries. The insurance company have several programs like Mom's Kitchen, Meals on Wheels. So we do have a number of resources to help with patients' food insecurities. Okay, and that's just one of the top problems that we're finding in completing the social determinants of health prepared form.
Right. So, and thank you for those resources, Roxana. That's great. And again, there can be many more. So we do encourage you that if you're listening to this webinar and you have other insecurities, always feel free to reach out to your PCP. Ask that a referral be put into the social worker here at United Medical ACO, and we can make sure that your case is assigned to have you work with them. We do know, and I know we were watching a video yesterday about food and healthy foods, right? Because a lot of times in order to eat healthy, it costs more. So we do understand that. And one of the things that Roxana had mentioned about like the food bank or some of the other food pantries, they keep a stock of a lot of the staple items that don't go bad, like a lot of your canned vegetables, canned fruit, powdered milk, and things like that. But many of them, when they have the large mobile food drives, they also incorporate healthy options like, fresh chicken, they offer usually fresh vegetables or fresh fruits. They do offer, also breads or pastries or things of that nature, but more fresh foods, things that aren't always, from a box or a can. And so those are good options. But again, it depends on the patient's needs. I was working at one of the food drives one time, and we had some individuals come up pulling a wagon, and they lived in a tent community very close to this social services area down in Georgetown. And that was one of the things that they said is, I have no place to put milk or chicken or no way to cook that. So, they really wanted to focus on more of the other items, those canned goods and things like that, because they stated they build fires in order to cook their food, right? But they needed to have things that could be out in the elements because they didn't have a refrigerator or things of that nature. So we want to make sure that if you're listening again, that you understand those options. And with the insurance companies, again, you have to qualify. So we're not going to go through all of those steps. But as Roxana mentioned, based on the needs of the patient and whether they meet certain qualifications, they may be eligible to have a certain number of meals delivered per day or per week. There are differences. Some are delivered warm every day, like a lunch or a dinner. There are other delivery services that may bring it and put it into, so they're prepared foods, but they're in the freezer. And so then it makes it easy for the individual to just take out and perhaps, just have to warm it up. And Caroline's going to get into a lot more details. So we're going to turn it over to her for her perspective on smart grocery shopping on a budget.
Thank you. And I wanted to add to that that if you are working through food insecurity, you can always tell your dietitian as well, because we can also put in that referral to social work to get that assistance for you and help to strategize ways you can use, which we'll go through, of course, ways you can use with what food pantries give you. How can we create something sustainable that's blood sugar friendly? Um, and as we talk about social determinants of health, we see that like health is multifactorial. So it's more than just, the types of food I'm putting into my body equals health, or the weight I am equals health. There's all these little things like our education, our access to transportation, our access to healthcare, all of that impacts our health in great measures. So we're just kind of taking out sections right here as we talk about food. That's one aspect of health that we'll talk about to help with our blood sugar management. So it's super important that we see ourselves as complex individuals. Every individual and every patient has their own individual life and their own individual struggles and things that impact their health. So we're going to break down the food side of things for some smart grocery shopping on a budget to help us make choices to balance our blood sugar, because we know food costs are on the rise. And so, how do we adapt the most while also supporting our blood sugar? And it takes some intentionality, but it is possible. So today we're going to walk through some budget-friendly grocery shopping tips and what it looks like when we are shopping. And our goal is that we feel prepared and confident in our ability to balance our shopping, our budget, as well as balancing our blood sugars too. So some budget-friendly grocery shopping tips. Like I had mentioned, planning ahead and intentionality is going to be super important for this process, because going on a whim to the store, and you're more prone to those good marketing tactics, the end caps that offer the fun, exciting pairings of certain snack foods together. We usually buy what we don't need, what we already have, or we overbuy. And so planning doesn't have to be complicated. It can look as simple as having a couple meal ideas in your head for things you want to pick up and put together. It can be checking your pantry ahead of the time before you go to the store to see what you already have available. Or maybe you're going to look through the sales section. I always start my week with looking what's on sale this week. How can I create some meals around, the meat that's on sale? So that could save you money in the long run because you're more intentional about what you're buying. But we're going to see, how do we know what we're going to look for? Is there a way to break it down to make it a little bit easier? Because sometimes when you go to the store, it's really overwhelming. So we're going to talk about the 5-4-3-2-1 plan. And it's a simple guidance for your meal planning to give you 5 fruits and vegetables, 4 whole grains, 3 proteins, 2 dairy products, and 1 blood sugar friendly treat, because we're all about flexibility here. So this can vary. You might see a couple different online versions where it's 5 vegetables, 4 fruits, 3 whole grains. You might see some different variations with that. This one I feel is the most budget friendly for stretching a meal plan. It's also the one where you get usually less waste from wasting products. Because if you do 5 fruits and 4, or 5 vegetables and 4 fruits, that's a lot of produce, or a lot of things to eat through the week. So breaking it down into simpler terms of 5 fruits and vegetables. That way you have less of a quantity, but you still have some quality ingredients to use. And then 4 whole grains. Usually grains are more shelf stable, so you're stretching the budget farther and able to use these products longer. And then 3 proteins, because you can use proteins in different ways, which we'll talk about. So it can vary from where you see it online, but this is the one I find is most conducive to a stable budget and gives you less waste overall. So just as an example, for thinking like 5 fruits and veggies, you could do carrots, frozen broccoli, bell peppers, and then maybe you're going to get some clementines and frozen fruit. And so it could even be canned fruit if you wanted. So those are the 5 fruits and veggies we could choose. Grains could be like whole grain bread, brown rice, whole wheat pasta, and whole grain crackers. Proteins, you could do chicken breast, canned chicken or tuna. Eggs, dairy products, you could do yogurt or string cheese as your dairy options. And then maybe you're going to get a bar of dark chocolate as your little sweet treat for the week. So it just gives you some items to make sure you look for and you include on your shopping list if you don't know where to start. So it's straightforward, and ways to kickstart those more well-rounded, balanced eating habits by focusing on the nutritious staples and then allowing for some small treats here and there to stay on track with our wellness goals while keeping grocery shopping and meal planning relatively simple. And by using this method, we're less likely to impulse buy. So buying extra things that we don't need or that we go in and we didn't think we needed, but we grab anyway because it's on sale. So of course you can add, if you find you need things, you can add to this list. So if you're out of ketchup, you can go and get ketchup, but it's more so just to give you those basic guidelines for when starting your trip to the store. Some other helpful tools are, writing those meal ideas down for the week, so it helps guide your shopping and what other ingredients might you need for that meal. So writing a list as you go into the store can be very helpful to keep you on track, and it can save you money as if you're sticking to the list. My other favorite recommendation, this is a personal recommendation, but if your local store offers online shopping or grocery pickup, I find that's a great way to save money because you're able to add the specific things you need and see the price as things come up. So you might be able to strategically be like, I don't think we need that this week. You could take it off and see your price adjustment. So if you're trying to save some money there. And I'm less likely to like overbuy or impulse buy because I'm not in the store. So I think when I started buying online, I might have saved about $20 to $40 a week because I'm not just throwing things in the cart. I'm being very intentional about the things that I'm including on our grocery list for the week. And of course, the most important one, don't shop when you're hungry. Don't do it. It's going to lead to impulse buys. Everyone thinks about food usually when you're hungry. And so usually you will buy those things that sound really good in the moment. And then you're like, why did I buy that? I didn't need it, or I already have it. So eat a snack or a well-balanced meal before you go to the grocery store. That way you're able to mindfully think about things that you actually need rather than things that you might want in that moment alone. And this is just a sample grocery list or shopping list that lists our 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method. We want to focus on fruits and vegetables that have a lower glycemic or fiber-rich substance to them, like carrots, which they could be eaten raw or cooked, so they're very affordable. Frozen spinach, which is great. You could add that to many different things: soups, eggs, dishes, hot or cold dishes if you wanted to. And it's frozen, so I keep a bag of frozen spinach in my freezer all the time and just kind of like sprinkle it into things. And that's a great way to throw in some extra fiber. And it lasts you usually a longer amount of time. And I like to compare that to fresh because usually with fresh spinach, you don't get a whole lot. Like when you cook it down, it gets to this little tiny, like half cup serving. Frozen spinach goes a longer way. So it usually lasts you longer. Cabbage is great. It lasts a long period of time. It's lower carbohydrate, so blood sugar friendly. And then we also have apples and maybe some frozen berries that are mixed. These portions go farther, usually last a longer period of time. You could keep apples in the fridge for, I've done it a week or two, and they've usually stayed pretty shelf stable at that point. Then we move on to our grains. So choosing high fiber grains are going to be what we look for when we're trying to pick out some grains for the week. Old-fashioned oats, the oats that you make at home, brown rice, which pairs well with a lot of different dishes, whole wheat bread or tortillas, preferably higher fiber if we can find them, barley or quinoa. They're fiber packed, and these foods are really filling. So it's a great way to stretch a meal. If you, for example, like I'm thinking of like an enchilada bake, you could throw some beans, you could throw some canned tomatoes in there, you could throw some rice, and by adding the rice to it, you're stretching that meal to make many different servings. Comparatively, if you didn't have a grain, it would be a much smaller serving and you might not feed as many people in the house without using the grains. So it makes a meal really sustainable. And then we also have our protein sources, of course, our eggs. You could do like egg beaters, or you could do egg whites if they're cheaper. I know when the price of eggs went up, I was supplementing my eggs with some egg whites. It was cheaper to buy the egg whites than it was to buy the actual eggs. So I usually recommended, okay, if you're getting a carton of eggs and a carton of egg whites, you could make your eggs last so much longer just by like using an egg, then pouring some egg white in it. You kind of increase the portion size, which is nice. You could use dry or canned lentil or beans. Those are great. Like any meal you can picture can have beans or lentils in it. They absorb any flavor. They're really nutrient packed with fiber and protein. So those are a great filling protein that are generally lower in cost comparatively to your meat products. Canned items like canned tuna, chicken, salmon, those are great shelf-stable protein-rich options with really good sources of fatty acids. And then, of course, our dairy products. which we have some plain fat-free Greek yogurt, higher in protein, usually lower in sugar if we can find it, and low-fat milk or unsweetened plant-based milk's fine. You could do cheese sticks or the blocks of cheese if those are available. Great little snack to keep on hand. And then our blood sugar friendly treat, there's other options other than just dark chocolate. That's usually my favorite one to go to because it can last you for a while. You can break it up into little squares for the week, and it's just something to give you that sweetness at the end of a meal. And it's usually the higher the cocoa that you have in the product, usually the lower the amount of added sugar, which is what makes it so blood sugar friendly. There are other fun options you could find online if you wanted to do some, like, I'm really into this Greek yogurt, like protein, like ice cream type thing where you add Greek yogurt, sugar-free Jello mix, and you mix it together and it creates this like cheesecake vibe. So you could get really creative with the dessert and treat, but our goal is to have it be blood sugar friendly, right? So not super high in added sugar, but you've got some protein mixed into it if possible. But you do have some options when you're thinking of getting something fun for the week. And then we have our blood sugar friendly grocery shopping tips, mostly centered around avoiding waste. So sometimes when we overbuy, it results in us throwing food out. And that is like our biggest pet peeve in our family is wasting food because it's just so sad to see things that you bought and you planned on using, but you never got to use. And we can see that a lot with fresh fruits and vegetables. If you're not going to use the fresh fruits and vegetables within the week, focus on canned and frozen just as nutrient dense. We'll talk about that on the next slide too. It's just as nutrient dense, and if it's going to result in not wasting food, you're saving money in the long run. So that's usually a great option. Buying in bulk, it makes sense for some families depending on the product. So if buying in bulk and produce or meat means you're going to waste it, probably not worth buying in bulk, even if it is cheaper, at the time. But buying in bulk can be helpful for those shelf stable options like rice and beans and pastas, because those items are going to last you a long time. And if your family uses it a lot, that makes it worth to buy in bulk. And you can tell whether an item is cheaper in bulk by looking at the unit price. So comparing the unit price in your products. Now, these prices are a little unrealistic for a yogurt cup, in my opinion, but it gives you the gist. So we can see here that the 32 ounce of low-fat yogurt is about 5 cents per an ounce. If you just looked at the price and didn't look at that unit price, you'd see $1.62 compared to the 6 ounce, which is 72 cents. Well, $1.62 is more expensive, so I'm going to go with the cheaper option. If you look at the unit price, you're going to see that that cheaper option, the 6 ounces of low-fat yogurt, is actually more expensive for the ounces per an ounce. So you actually save money in the long run by getting a 32 ounce of yogurt for a lower unit price. Now, for example, if buying a bulk, you're going to waste the yogurt, you're not going to eat all of the yogurt, and you're better off just getting a small little cup because you're going to finish it. That would be a case where you might just want to buy, the cheaper yogurt, even if the unit price is higher. So you can kind of compare based on what your family eats the most, what makes sense for you with the specific product that you're buying. And of course, using our pantry items creatively. So we want to repurpose and stretch meals with what you have already. So taking inventory of what you have in your pantry. If you already have rice in your pantry, what kind of meals can we create around that staple that's already there? Or if you already have beans there, what can we create around that? So getting creative. And the internet is a great place for things like that. We have a Pinterest board that we offer. We have a link to. And so we kind of save certain recipes that come in mind for specific medical conditions or things that we're working through, like diabetes specifically. There's options for low budget, like we want to make sure we stretch our meals. So what kind of meals are available for that? So getting creative and finding some inspiration about what you already have can really help save money in the long run, and manage your blood sugars because we're more intentional about the types of foods that we're including in that meal plan specifically. And of course, my favorite part is freezing leftovers. So don't throw it out. Most things can be frozen, especially if you have like a pepper going bad in the fridge. That happens to me all the time. Just chop it up, throw it in the freezer in a Ziploc bag, and use it in your next stir fry or in your enchiladas or whatever you're making. A lot of things can be frozen that we don't think of. We recently just made like a lentil bolognese sauce to go over our pastas, and we made too much of it. So we froze the rest, and now it can be heated up in like little single portions to be used as a meal. So it helps with your future meal prep and saves some time down the road. And then we're reducing our food waste overall as well. And just a fun fact, that I'm actually starting to do myself is vegetable scraps. If you're cutting fresh vegetables and or even fruits, but you have leftover scraps, put them in a Ziploc bag, like your carrots, celery stalks, and things like that. Put it in a Ziploc bag, put it in the freezer, and within a month or two of filling that with scraps, you could create your own vegetable broth by boiling those leftover vegetables. So you've just extended the life of the vegetables and parts that we usually throw away. So being super thrifty with what we have can really save money in the long run and also be utilized in a really great way by having, your own broth or your own sauce later on. And then so it's just some foods that stretch your dollar. Like Donna had mentioned, dry beans, canned beans, lentils, tofu. There are a lot of strong opinions about tofu. I am on the lover side of tofu, but it's a great low cost protein option that really absorbs any flavor you cook it in. So you could cook it in many different ways, saute it, bake it, air fry it. Recently, we just crumbled or shredded it, and so it tasted kind of like a little bit. I'm going to get in trouble for comparing it to bacon, but it was crispy like bacon. And so it had that protein content, lower in cost, and was still really satisfying. So don't be afraid of tofu. There are great recipes online to use it and utilize it well. And it's really great. I think it's like per serving 9 grams of protein for pretty small servings. So you get a lot of nutrients packed in at one time. Rice, oats, and whole grains, great budget-friendly stretching options. A lot of these can be used in different ways. You could use quinoa, for example. You could use quinoa in several different recipes. In the morning, you could use it as like a warm, kind of like oatmeal. You could cook it similar to oatmeal and have a warm breakfast bowl. For lunch, you could mix it into a cold salad. For dinner, you could have it in a bake of some sort, like a casserole. So you can really use these grains in a lot of different ways, and so you could stretch your dollar even more. And canned veggies and fruits and frozen veggies and fruits. So I mentioned they are the same exact nutrient content. You don't have to worry about sacrificing health if you're going to avoid the fresh vegetables. The only thing we want to worry about for canned vegetables is monitoring the sodium levels. You could reduce the sodium by looking for no sodium added or low sodium on the label. You could also rinse the vegetables under cold water, which reduce it by about 30%. Frozen or canned fruits, you want to make sure it's just canned in water or 100% fruit juice. Avoid the syrups because that's not going to be too blood sugar friendly. It's going to have excess added sugar to it. Frozen fruits and veggies are sometimes even more nutrient dense than your fresh because they're flash frozen in their peak freshness. So you're getting sometimes even greater nutrient and vitamin mineral concentration in those items. And then we also have peanut butter, canned tuna, chicken, salmon, some of those shelf-stable items that are still nutrient dense. We've got really rich sources of healthy fats and some protein thrown into there. So don't be afraid about incorporating some of these items. We do a fun sriracha tuna bowl. And so you take, tuna, mix it with some mayonnaise, a little bit of hot sauce or sriracha, and then we put it over rice. And so you've got like the sushi bowl, but it's a lower cost option rather than getting fresh fish. So there's a lot of different creative ways you can use these staple foods to stretch your dollar and be blood sugar friendly as well. So we talked a lot about, different resources, especially if there's some food insecurity. There's navigating food banks or food pantries. And so what to look for, right? We're going in and we might not know what's in stock. So we want to see if we can focus on nutrient-dense foods that provide the most per serving. And some of the items that we already talked about are available in your food pantries, like canned tuna, salmon, or canned chicken, dry or canned beans, peanut butter, sometimes eggs if there's a refrigerated section. Whole grain options, you'd find your brown rice, your quinoa, your oats, whole grain pasta, whole grain crackers. Looking for more fiber if you can. If you want to read your labels, knowing what to look for, you can see, does it have a good fiber content? And that's a great way to guide your grain choice. And of course, your canned fruits and vegetables, sometimes fresh if those are available, of course. Getting the fresh vegetables that you know you'll eat. If you're like, ooh, there's fresh spinach, but we don't really eat spinach often, we might want to choose something different as our vegetable option. If there's bananas and you're like, we love bananas, we're going to eat all those bananas, bananas are a great choice because you're not going to waste those and you're going to eat them and use them efficiently in your diet plan. Sometimes there are some milk options, shelf-stable milk like powdered milk or plant-based milk, rice milk and things like that could be available as well. And reading labels where you can. So watching for added sodium and added sugar and saturated fats. When it gets too overwhelming, you can compare two products. You can pick one up and see which one has lower added sugar, and that's usually a way to guide your canned good choice or your boxed good choice. And don't be afraid to ask your pantry staff and volunteers questions. They often know what's in stock. They might have some insights into healthier options or upcoming deliveries of like fresh produce or dairy that might be available, or it could direct you to other, local pantries or food banks that have access to those things. And there might even be some recipes or nutrition handouts. There's tons of community dietitians out there who serve the community and write, specific highlights on specific foods or how to use this specific ingredient. So utilize the information that they have available for you on site. And when in doubt, if you feel like you don't have access to the healthiest or the most balanced choices, work on your plate model. So if we can aim for a half a plate of vegetables or fruits, a fourth of a plate of protein, a fourth of a plate of grain, you can customize pretty much any meal to support your blood sugar needs, as long as we're prioritizing those higher fiber and more protein dense options with smaller portions of those carbohydrate options. Be flexible because we know these inventories do change on a regular basis based on what's available. So over time, the more frequently you go, you might find the days and times that are best to go or what items are typically available. So that can guide your shopping trip. It can guide your meal planning and supplement maybe what you have at home as well. So when possible, if you do shop at other stores and you use food bank and pantries as supplemental, you can always buy your fresh produce and your meat products at your local food or with SNAP benefits or at discount stores, wherever you find them. And you can use the combination of both food pantry and food store or market together to help create your 5-4-3-2-1 plan of making sure you have all of those nutrients when possible. So just shopping smart by planning and comparing. It just takes a little extra time to look at two products. It takes a little extra time to maybe think ahead of what might be available. What will we eat? Fruits, vegetables, whole grain wise, breaking it down into some simple terms to guide that planning and get creative with what you already have in your pantry. Sometimes there's things in the back you didn't even know you had. So doing some inventory and making a list of what you already have and then going to the food store and or the pantry and seeing what is available can help you kind of create some ideas around what might be a sustainable option for meals for the week. And remember, we can make really small alterations to your meals to be blood sugar friendly and cost effective. It just takes some small little tweaks, even if we feel like we don't have it all put together starting off. And that was it. Any questions about budget shopping or nutrient concerns?
I don't really have a question, but it just made me think as you were going through those things and like when you got to the be creative. So when we were just on vacation, we were out one particular day in Jamestown. And so we were with others and we got to a food truck and I liked that they had options, but I was thinking a lot of the things you just mentioned would be good for others and myself because I love quinoa. It's one of my very favorites. And so it started with that. And then they had a bunch of vegetables. So, like you said, being creative, if you have some leftover vegetables, they happen to roast red peppers and the yellow peppers. They had roasted corn. They also had some fresh avocado in there. But I was thinking if I was doing it at home, I'd probably add like some black beans or something to it. But it was really good, like, that was, like, one of my favorite, like, lunches that we had because it was filling, like, I felt like it carried over for a long time, but I feel like you could be creative with that and do a bunch of different types of, um vegetables, right? You could just roast up a
Yeah,
variety of different vegetables, even and have it like you could cook your quinoa and then warm that up with other things, or even fresh vegetables. Like you said, you could, switch it up and do something like that. So sometimes we might have or see an idea that we can then take and tailor it right to our own personal. Um,
absolutely. And we even do like if there's a recipe online that I'm following, it has so many ingredients. My biggest pet peeve is like buying ingredients I'm only going to use once. So I
right.
might just like find a substitute for that, or I might just exclude it altogether. You can customize. Usually
Mhm.
with cooking, it's fine. Baking is a little more scientific than cooking. So you can customize, like if you don't want to use you know, liquid smoke. Like one recipe called for liquid smoke. I was like, when am I going to use that again? If you don't want to use that, that's okay. Add some paprika or add some spices to it just to give
Right.
you that flavor. So it doesn't always have to be verbatim what the recipe says, and you don't have to feel like you have to get those things. It can be just as good if you do it on your own.
Right, with the creative, or sometimes even when you are baking, we've looked up again, if it's something that we thought we had and we don't have, you can look up to see, is there a substitute for? So we,
Yeah, yeah.
right, is there a substitute for XYZ? And then we're like, okay, do I have that in the house or do I need to run out? So not being afraid to be creative, or like you said, leave something out or take some if you don't have something. Because I'm like you, I don't like buying things, you know, buy something big and then you're going to use it one time and then you
And
feel
then it
like
goes to waste.
it's a good deal, but then you're like, I'm never going to use that again. So I've been wasteful. Well, I wanted to thank both of you. Did you have any final words before we leave, Roxana?
No, it's just that when it comes to completing the social determination of health, this is just one of the aspects the primary care doctor is doing for better health, and also to make sure that all of your needs are being addressed. So,
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank both of you for joining us today, and we will be back next month with additional topics and presenters. Have a great day. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
goodbye.